And now, please welcome to the stage Chief Product Officer Mark Dao.
Good morning, and welcome to day 2 of Connect. I hope you all had an amazing day yesterday, being inspired by Ross Mason, our founder, having a chance to imagine the future with Uri Sarid as we looked at the future of service, and learning from David Berlind, the editor-in-chief of Programmable Web. I love being here in London with all of you. This is one of our main sites, and we have so many partners and customers here who have been with us through our entire journey. It's great to be back. I had a great day yesterday speaking with many of you about the innovation programs that you and your teams are running. And what we know is that innovation continues to be a core aspect of what you're driving forward with your API programs and the leverage of integration platforms. Now, we're in a place today where these API programs and these integration platforms have become mainstream. What this means is that if you and your organizations have not driven greater strategic advantage from your APIs and from your integrations, you are fundamentally falling behind because the rest of industry is driving forward in this way. Now, we believe that an application network allows for your teams to gain even greater advantage from the integrations and the APIs that you've already built. So my ask is, as we go through this conversation today, consider how application networks can help your organizations to really take full advantage of all of those assets and all the capabilities you already have in your organizations. The benefit will be that, as we've talked about before, as IT moves from the boiler room to the boardroom, and as integrations become the application, your organizations are looking for you and your teams to help lead them through this new journey and through the acceleration of innovation. So let's get started. I am going to be talking about some forward-looking topics today, so please make all of your purchasing decisions based on currently available product. Now, we see change. We see change all around us in every industry. We see the adoption of technology and these capabilities really driving innovation across every organization and disruption in many. And what's interesting is, as we look at this, we start to see a pattern emerge. Let's take a look at some. Financials. Financial industries are focused on the core of fiduciary responsibility, but then also starting to look more like B2C retailers, thinking about how to come alongside every consumer in every step along the way in their life's journey. If you've just graduated from college, you might be getting offers around your student loan. As you rent an apartment, you may start getting offers around a mortgage. You get a mortgage, you start getting insurance offers. So they're tracking you through your entire lifespan. And at some point, you'll start to get offers for your kids' college funds. Let's take a look at healthcare. When we think about healthcare platforms, we start seeing companies that are moving from and focusing on the core of clinical care, but then also looking at all those capabilities to create healthcare platforms. One of our customers, Mount Sinai, has taken all of their patient records and enabled a set of APIs for those to be visible outside of their organization, enabling for the community care providers to actually tap into that information and extend care beyond the 4 walls of the hospital out into the community. As we take a look at consumer packaged goods, there's the focus on the mass market, looking at demographics, looking at the mass production, but then also starting to look at direct-to-consumer sales. So what's the pattern that we actually see across all of these? These industries are not pivoting away from their core. Rather, they're focused on the core, but also looking at a breadth of capabilities to advance how they're thinking about their business. And we see this pattern in another place. How many of you are aware, show of hands, how many of you are aware of this phenomenon of a T-shaped individual? Number of hands going up. Okay. T-shaped individuals. Tim Brown, former CEO of IDEO, a design firm. You may be aware of them. They designed the original Apple mouse, the Palm Pilot. If you're sitting on a steel case chair, they designed many of those. They're in this very creative industry. And in the creative industries, what we've found is that there are these different domains. You might have a product manager who's thinking about product market fit. You have a designer thinking about the desirability of a product. You have an engineer thinking about, can this thing be built? And it's really the tension between these different domains in perfect balance that creates an amazing product. And what IDEO found is that the individuals who have both depth and breadth, the ability to go deep in their particular domain, but then have a broader understanding of the other domains. These are the individuals who are the 10Xers inside of organizations. They drive creativity and collaboration. So it's both depth and breadth. So we see this pattern now in organizations as well. Let's take a look at that example of the consumer packaged goods company. One of our customers, Unilever, is focused on their core depth of the mass market, looking at mass demographics, looking at their supply chain, understanding how to manage and operate that entire supply chain. At the same time, Unilever has started to drive at direct-to-consumer sales. This completely changes how they have to think about interacting with that end consumer. How do you communicate with an individual consumer rather than a mass market? It changes how they think about analytics. The data sets that they have and how they have to integrate and work with those data sets completely changes in terms of analyzing an individual consumer's needs and understanding what that looks like year over year. And then Unilever has expanded upon that to create an API ecosystem to enable that direct-to-consumer sales channel. Now, what's interesting is that this breadth of capabilities has allowed Unilever to start thinking about technologies and capabilities in an extremely agile way. And what that's allowed them to do is actually take all of those core capabilities, direct-to-consumer engagement, analytics, and API ecosystems, and start to apply them back to their core. So this is the thought of where industries are going. It's that depth as well as the breadth of capabilities, driving innovation in the core, but then also enabling agility and speed of discovery through the vertical or through the horizontal plane. Now, we see this also occurring in the context of the integration ecosystem. At the core, we have central IT, continuing to drive forward with integration programs, the core systems that need to be enabled and need to be exposed, all the business processes that need to be made available. But in addition to the core of integration, we also see a broader set of personas starting to be engaged. There's the line of business user who wants to self-serve on both data as well as process. As API programs become more mainstream, there's a need for the broader set of personas, the marketing team, the business development team, the developer relations teams to be involved in the creation of API programs. It's no longer just a technical concern. And then as security becomes a concern more broadly, security teams and all teams are looking for ways to leverage APIs and integrations to drive a higher security stance. So here we have both the depth of integration capabilities as well as the breadth of needs across these personas. So let's start by looking at the depth of integration needs. We have these core foundations of integration, these core patterns. We've all used them before. We've got the migration pattern, where we're moving data from one system to another. We've got the broadcast pattern, sort of a pub-sub, where you might put an event out and you have listeners waiting for those events to occur. You have an aggregation pattern, where you're bringing data or process from multiple systems and creating a composite. Bidirectional sync, where you're looking at data being correlated between two systems or being moved between two systems. And then a maybe more modern version of that, where you leave data in place, but you correlate it, and you query the data as you need to. You federate out the information. Now, what's interesting about these patterns is that if you look at each of them individually, you get some value. But really where you get the most value is when you think of them holistically across all of these different patterns. Because oftentimes when you're using these patterns, what you'll find is, in this case, you have an aggregation. You might be bringing together information and data for a customer 360 record. You create that composite, but the very next thing you want to do is drive out a broadcast notification to all those systems that want to be listening for the change on that customer record. So it's the combination of these patterns together that really give you full advantage. In addition to these patterns, it's really about productizing that API and that integration. What do we mean by a productized API or productized integration? These are APIs and integrations that have a strategy, a roadmap, a set of consumers, and maybe one consumer initially, but as those APIs and integrations climb the value ladder, you'll find more and more reuse enabled. And it's through the creation and the thought process around creating these APIs and integrations as products that starts to drive reuse in the organization. And that leads to an application network, a network of all your applications, data, and devices. And much like a computer network, that application network allows you to plug and unplug assets very rapidly. It allows you to be resilient to change, to new systems. It allows you to deprecate old systems very effectively. And the application network is not just a concept. It's a physical reality when you build with productized APIs and productized integrations. The Anypoint Platform is built from the ground up to enable you and your teams to build those application networks, to construct them a project at a time. At the core of the Anypoint Platform, we have our runtime engine and services. This bottom layer is where the data flows, where the API policies are applied. And this is a distributed framework, so you can put this workload wherever you need. Across the middle, we have our design time plane, our control plane. From Design Center, allowing your teams to define and design APIs, to Exchange, enabling your teams to collaborate effectively. It's a Management Center, allowing you to deploy, manage, and operate all those APIs and integrations. And then security across the top, advanced security, enabling a new type of security across the entire environment. Now, in addition to the technical platform, we also have MuleSoft Catalysts. These are business products. These are packages that our teams have put together from the knowledge that we've developed over thousands of customer deployments, helping organizations first define their digital strategy with Catalyst Mobilize, enable the launch of the first project, Catalyst Launch, then come back and start to look at scaling out those capabilities across the entire organization. So you can federate out and have the broader organization be a part of the creation of those integrations and of those APIs. How do you remove the bottlenecks of a central team and really distribute that out? That's what we look at with Catalyst Scale. And then with Catalyst Optimize, come back and start looking at business process optimizations and all the analytics and the key metrics that we look at to ensure that teams are healthy from the perspective of their innovation velocity and innovation capacity. So it's this combination of a technical platform and a business platform that come together that allow you and your teams to really drive innovation forward. Now, since we were here last in London, it's been a big year. I'm really proud of what the team's been able to deliver. A couple areas to focus on as we take a look at the Anypoint Platform and all the features that we released over the course of the last year. The runtime plane, we continue to drive forward with Mule 4, advancements in that core runtime, focused on performance and focused on driving acceleration of use cases. In addition, you'll see the application network graph. This is the underlying store that brings together all the metadata that is in the application network. And more, you will begin to see all the capabilities from that application network graph driven out across everything from Design Center to Exchange and collaboration to management. We've also enabled broader deployments of Mules through Runtime Fabric and also the EU control plane, allowing you to distribute globally your integrations and your APIs. As we look at Design Center, continue to drive forward on capabilities for the core integrators as well as the citizen integrators, enabling, again, the collaboration between those two parties, critical to making them successful. In Exchange, API Community Manager was released to enable your organizations to drive strategic advantage from all of your APIs and your API programs, bringing in those additional personas of the marketing and the business development person to enable the business conversation to happen in the context of those API programs. In Management Center, we looked at the broad distribution of management across an entire application network, while also being able to rapidly drill down to a specific flow and a specific message processor. In security, enabled the edge, tokenization services. We'll see yet more as we look ahead. Now, today, I'm really happy to announce the October 2019 release. We do have continuous integration and continuous deployment, so you'll be seeing all these capabilities rolled out week by week over the course of the next 3 months. As we take a look at the runtime plane, we continue to drive forward on the Mule runtime. In addition, we're releasing Partner Manager. This is going to enable you to manage all the interactions with your trading partners, all the configurations needed for each of the different types of trading partners that you may have in an organization. In Design Center, you'll see additional capabilities around the Citizen Integrator, simplifying how they engage and how they build their integrations. Those templates are business-specific templates for Flow Designer targeted at business use cases, enabling both the distribution of those use cases from MuleSoft, as well as enabling you and your teams to build templates for specific flows inside of your organization. As we look at Exchange, we have cross-org sharing. So now it's about the distribution and the sharing and collaboration capabilities, not just within an organization, but across teams and across organizations. So imagine if you have a business partner and you want to start working on them on a plan. You have a set of APIs that you want to interact with them on, but you also have data types. You may have a customer record or an order record that has a specific shape, and you want to distribute that to them to ensure that both processes, what your teams are building as well as what your partners are building, are aligned. Cross-org sharing will allow you to distribute those domain models globally across your partners. As we look at Management Center, we start thinking about how to bring in not just coarse-grained services with APIs and with that application network, but also microservices, and bringing those microservices into your application network with Anypoint Service Mesh. And in security, we'll be releasing into government cloud, and whether you're in the public sector or not, what this will do is uplift the overall security stance of the Anypoint platform for all of your teams. So I'm really happy about what we'll be delivering and we'll be enabling your teams to do with the Anypoint platform as we look at this release. So that is the depth, the core of integration. Now let's turn our attention and start looking at some of the breadth, the additional personas that might be involved and engaged in your integration programs, in your API programs. And we look at some of these trends, the democratization of IT, the proliferation of API programs, and the impact of security. Let's start with the democratization of IT. We know that everybody in the organization is becoming more technical day by day. And we know that in order to enable each of them to realize their needs day by day, there's a need to start enabling self-service, enabling a line of business user to have access to data as well as process. The question and the concern is, how do you enable that without having to come back later and end up rebuilding everything that's been built? How do you have visibility into actually what's being deployed? And an even greater concern, how do you ensure that you don't have a security hole that's being created or data that's being exfiltrated? So the question is, how do you drive this agility while still having the right elements of governance and enabling both of these together? The Anypoint platform enables this through fit-for-purpose tools. We have Studio built for the integration specialist, and everything that is built by the integration specialist goes into the application network, gets deployed there. Then we have Flow Designer, targeted for the Citizen Integrator. And everything that's built inside of Studio can be leveraged inside of Flow Designer, driving the collaboration between these two personas and these two groups. Everything that's built inside of Flow Designer also goes in the application network, thereby ensuring you get the consistency of governance and visibility across everything that's built and deployed. And really, it comes down to governance through collaboration. How can we drive the right behaviors, because this is the best way and the easiest way to build something. So to show you what this looks like, I'd like to bring Badi Azad on the stage. Welcome, Badi. Badi is one of our product managers here at MuleSoft, focusing on Flow Designer. For the purpose of this demo, Badi is going to be a sales analyst working for Northern Trail Outfitters, an adventure retailer. And what he's trying to do, what he wants to do, is actually build a capability so that his team can be notified every time a sales order closes. Badi?
Great. Thanks, Mark. I'm excited to be here, and as Mark mentioned, I'm going to play the role of a sales ops manager at Northern Trail Outfitters. So let me start by showing you some of the new functionality that our team has been utilizing from Flow Designer. So let's start out here at the Anypoint Design homepage. And here on the top left, you see Design Center. This is where our team goes to build out our integrations and our APIs. On the right, you see Management Center. This is where we go to manage, monitor, and secure those APIs and those integrations. And on the bottom, we have the Exchange. This is the integration app store, if you will. Now, Exchange comes full of your assets from your company, as well as the assets that are provided by MuleSoft. Right? And let me show you one of the new functionalities that my team has been leveraging a lot inside of the Exchange. They're called templates. So let me show you how you can find that. So you drop this down and enter into the template filter. Here, you type in Flow Designer, hit enter, and here you see some of the Flow Designer optimized templates that are available for us. Now, this is great, and my team has been leveraging these a lot because it allows us to get started faster. As Mark mentioned, for the sake of this demo, what we're trying to build is a notification integration where when an opportunity from Salesforce is marked as closed won, we want to send a Slack message to our team, to our sales team. So let's see if there's actually a template that's available that might help us out. So here's something interesting here. Why don't we take a closer look? Now, what I see in this template detail page is a description of the template, some of the systems that are involved, how I can set it up, and popular ways of customizing it. This is pretty interesting because it allows my team to get started faster. Why don't we go ahead and try this out? So let's click on this Open Flow button here. And when I click on this, it launches Flow Designer, which is MuleSoft's web-based design environment for integrations. It actually opens that template right in here, and we can use this template out of the box by adding in some credential information, or we can customize it. Now, let me show you another feature that we've started to use a lot more. When I open up the Slack message here, you notice that there's a Notes tab. Now, my team has been using this Notes tab to collaborate. You also see that this Notes tab includes information about how to authenticate or customize this. So it really helps us get started faster. And we write messages to each other in terms of what we're doing with this specific connector. All right, let me close this out. Now, one of the things that we run into in this specific scenario is that our sales team in the UK actually enter financial information in euros, right? But unfortunately, in the States, we need that information in dollars. So if I needed to build out a currency converter as part of this flow, I might go out to the internet and look for one, or I might ask IT to build me something specific. But because we're using the Anypoint platform, let's take a look back in Exchange and see if there's something here that we might be able to utilize. All right, so we're back in Exchange, and let's look to see if there is a currency converter. And it looks like there's one right here. And let's take a closer look at this. Now, this currency converter was created maybe for another project, but it looks like in the detail page here, it converts between a number of different currencies. I see some information on how to use it and where the data comes from. This is pretty interesting.
Now let me jump in on this one. This is an example of that governance through collaboration. So imagine you're in an organization and you're looking for a currency converter API. If every line of business user is out there looking for their own, you're going to get inconsistency between Forex rates, how often they're being refreshed, and so on. Imagine now, as central IT, if you can curate these capabilities, you make it easier for your teams to find the right currency converter, and you're effectively deploying governance, but in a way that's driving collaboration and accelerating your line of business teams. Badi?
All right, so this looks pretty interesting. Let's jump back into Flow Designer. All right, so now I can move my mouse after the Salesforce connector and click on this plus button. Here you can see that Flow Designer is seamlessly integrated with the Exchange. Now I just need to type back into my currency converter, select it, and here I can fill out the original currency by adding in the euros here, and selecting our target currency by adding in US dollars. Let's go ahead and close this card out, because that's really all I actually had to do. All right. Now, the next thing that we want to do is configure our Slack notification, right? So let me show you how easy that's actually become. Let me go inside to the Slack connector here, and all I have to do is type in my information that I want to send. Now, on the right-hand side, I see some of the data objects from the previous steps, and I can just click, drag, and drop them right into the message section. Now, even I can actually interact with this Slack connector without really having to learn DataWeave, the powerful scripting language from MuleSoft. This is really interesting. Now, let me show you another feature that's pretty cool. So I can actually go into one of these objects and click on this down arrow, and what I see here is a preview of that actual data. So this preview information either comes from the last time that I ran this flow or from any sample information that I provided. The other thing that you notice is there are some intelligent recommended functions that I can choose to apply right to the data of this object here. So for example here, we see that Sarah Smith has an extra trailing space here. Why don't we go ahead and apply the trim function, click it here, and immediately I see the preview update. What's really interesting about this is that even I, as a citizen integrator, can use the power of MuleSoft without having to learn the entire DataWeave language. So why don't we go ahead and close this out, and close out the Slack card. And why don't we run this flow? And let me show you what that looks like. So let's switch back over to Salesforce, now that it's running. All right, here we see that there's the opportunity called Foxwoods, right? So let's go ahead and come over here and mark this as closed 1. Let's save that out. And let me switch back over to Flow Designer. And here you can see the actual flow running through all the cards we created. And if we look, there it is on the top right, the Slack notification comes in, formatted exactly as I wanted with the information in dollars. OK, so within a few minutes, we were able to pull data out of Salesforce, find a currency converter, convert it into US dollars, and configure and send a nice Slack message to our team, all without writing a single line of code.
We're really excited about what we're able to do with Flow Designer, and I'm happy to announce today that everything that you just saw is available today. In addition, we'll have those additional templates that we're building out, even further capabilities, driving your citizen integrators, enabling them on the platform, and enabling that collaboration between the citizen as well as your integration specialists. Thanks so much, Badi.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Now let's turn our attention to API programs. We've been trying to build API programs for decades. In the past, there was the Field of Dreams version. Build APIs, put them out there, and hope somebody shows up. What we know now is that you need to have a core business strategy around those API programs. You have to understand why you're building them, who you're building them for, how you market them, and how you continue to innovate on them as you go forward. That's what drives core adoption. So when we think about what happens with an application network, you have all these assets available, these APIs and these integrations. You can start to think about how to actually bring packaged sets of these APIs to create these programs. Now, what's interesting about these programs is that these are not external programs, they're not internal programs, they're both. They're all the above. And they don't have to actually be separate. You can have a single API that's both in an external API program where you've enabled it for external adoption by a business partner. And at the same time, you can be leveraging that API for the next version, next generation, and be testing it in an internal API program within the organization. We've also heard from many of you the question of, how do I drive the change management? How do I get different organizations within my company to actually leverage each other's APIs? Again, these API programs can help you to market internally to those other organizations. And these API programs can be rapidly stood up and shut down, enabling agility. Imagine that you have a hackathon, and you want to understand how a set of APIs might be used. As a product manager, you can put together a set of APIs, you can mock them up, and publish them into an API program, and leverage them for a single hackathon. You can use all the capabilities of the developer engagement to gather feedback, shut it down, and move on your way. Driving rapid iteration and agility in your development, design, and your ideation cycles. So I'm happy to announce the availability of API Community Manager. API Community Manager enables the distribution of API portals, but then also these core capabilities of content management, of content for business users, not just the API specifications for the technologists. The enablement of forums and support case management, driving collaboration and engagement with the developers as they come on and start using and leveraging the product. And then engagement analytics to really understand where the developers are and how effectively you're engaging with them. To show us what this looks like, I'd like to bring Sanjana Verma on to stage. Welcome, Sanjana. Sanjana is one of our product managers here at MuleSoft, focusing on Studio. So if you have questions about that later, you can ask Sanjana. For the purpose of this demo, Sanjana is an API program owner at Northern Trail Outfitters, looking to drive the collaboration on APIs both internally and externally in her organization. Sanjana?
Thanks, Mark. So let's talk about API programs at my organization, Northern Trail Outfitters. Developers within my organization often build out their APIs and they make them accessible through Anypoint Exchange. However, we needed to often entice our developers, whether they're internal ones at a hackathon or partners and collaborators, to speed up their rate of innovation leveraging the APIs we've already built. In order to make this happen, we would often need to make sure that we combine things like documentation with forums, with the actual API functionality, and that took a lot of custom code. At the same time, we would also need to coordinate with our design and marketing teams, and that would make sure that everything's on brand. But at the end of the day, it took a lot of time and teams to build out a custom developer portal where we could think about leveraging APIs as products for our developers. Instead, we use API Community Manager, so we don't have to do that anymore. What I'm showing you is at the API Community Center at Northern Trail Outfitters. It's an immersive and branded site filled with information customized to make it relevant for our developer audience. It showcases information like corporate news alerts or information about local meetups and events. There are examples and case studies of what other companies have done to leverage our APIs as a way to inspire new ideas and new innovation. And the same APIs that we choose to share with our partners, and normally do so through Exchange, they're also here. So the difference is, we don't want to just show the fact that the API exists, but we also want to be able to deliver actionable information to both the non-technical and technical business stakeholders within the organization. So if I navigate over here into an API, I can see that we've been able to provide targeted business information around the capabilities that are available. For partners and business development teams, this is information to describe more than just the existence of the API, but how they can extend into our NTO ecosystem. It's also for developers so that they can have business value points to justify a new project, or they can simply navigate over here into our API technical details and understand more about the API itself. We have API reference documentation, and we also have information about the specification and the API console itself. Over here, there'll be the full details of the spec, including all of the API resources, all of the methods, even the exact operations, and the parameters and data types that are requested and responded to. We can take advantage of this and move forward if the specification also exposes the code snippets. Here, it does so in a variety of different frameworks and languages, from JavaScript to C to Java. And this way, developers within the organization can actually use the API really quickly by simply copying and pasting the code into their projects. Or they can also use a live mocking service over here. So if I go and I mock against it, it works just like the functionality in the Anypoint Exchange. And this is really important because this information is not duplicated. It is directly sourced and pulled from Anypoint Platform. So developers have the same experience of playing and exploring with their APIs. And if it meets their needs, they can go right up here to request access to the necessary keys and secrets to actually use the API. So while getting access to the technology is important and understanding how to use it is important, we at MuleSoft wanted to make sure that we could connect developers with each other. So that way you feel supported throughout your entire development journey. Over here, there are discussion forums where our developers can directly interact with our NTO team that built the API to give feedback or ask specific questions. Or they can even collaborate with each other. So this offers our developers an online community to learn from each other who are building apps with our APIs at NTO. And if they can't find the answer that they're looking for, they can also easily raise a support case ask a question, or even contact someone. So ultimately, we're allowing them many opportunities to get answers out much more quickly. So now let's switch gears a little bit, and we'll actually go and see how we run our community on the back end. I'm going to switch workspaces and show you how we at NTO can funnel and track all of those interactions in the forums, the API pages, from both a qualitative and quantitative perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and open the dashboard tile. And we'll see that this comes built in with KPIs and dashboards that help us understand the activity in our ecosystem and monitor the overall community engagement. And API Community Manager will also allow us to personalize our experience. If I were to switch tiles and go over here to the Community Builder, it's a drag and drop editor that will allow us to customize the look and feel of our page. I can build out variations of my page and target them to specific audiences. So for example, if I wanted to provide one experience for the developers participating in a hackathon, it's going to be different than the ones I need to leverage and show to partners who are trying to engage with a brand new API or a new experience. And without having to do a lot of manual work, we just have to define the rules which somebody can spin up a new instance and access this page. So with all of this, I have both the technical capabilities that I need to rapidly create communities and target content for both the internal and external audiences.
Rich, immersive environment driving developer engagement. Now, in addition to the technical capabilities that we see with API Community Manager, we also know that API programs require a business strategy. We need to think about all these different steps, from understanding what the digital strategy is, to driving change management, the deployment of the technology, and then engaging with the ecosystem. I'm really happy to announce, in addition to API Community Manager, the availability of the API Blueprints Catalyst. This is a packaged set of workshops that will help you and your team start to understand how to deliver those strategies, that change management program, as well as the rollout of API programs. Because we know that across all these different phases, there are lots of personas that are involved that you need to bring in across your organization, both on the production side as well as on the consumption side of those API programs. Sanjana, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now let's turn our attention to security. As we think about the application network, we start thinking about the mesh that exists between all the applications, data, and devices in your application network. Visibility, manageability, consistency across an entire network becomes a critical aspect. Discoverability, all for coarse-grained services. What's interesting is we know that there's also microservices now that are starting to appear in your environments. And these microservices have many of the same characteristics as an application network. There's a need for discoverability, for management, as well as cross-service authentication. I'm happy to announce Anypoint Service Mesh, which will bring those microservices environments into the application network. To show you what this will look like, I'd like to bring Kevin Balaji on the stage. Welcome, Kevin. Kevin is one of our product marketing managers here at MuleSoft. For the sake of this demo, Kevin is going to be a director of IT focused on enabling the developers inside of Northern Trail Outfitters to drive acceleration in their development through the use of microservices as well as an application network. Kevin?
Thanks, Mark. Today at NTO, we have a number of apps running on Anypoint Platform. Independently, in response to business needs, I've spun up a new team to build a new web purchasing experience. This team has built microservices for payments, inventory, orders, and customer information. These services were all built in different languages and currently reside within our Kubernetes cluster in our Azure private cloud. Now, as a director, I want to make sure that these, and really any of my microservices, don't fall into their own silos. So let's see how Anypoint Service Mesh can help extend our application network to account for all types of services. I start in Anypoint Platform, and I go to API Manager. Here, I can see my current Mule apps. I want to bring in my non-MuleSoft services into the same view. So let's see how I do that. To start, I'm going to install Anypoint Service Mesh onto our existing Kubernetes cluster for payment services. This is really easy and takes just 3 commands. With these first two commands, I install Istio, an open-source service mesh technology, onto my Kubernetes cluster. With a service mesh enabled, we could easily apply any of Istio's native policies for traffic control and zero-trust security. These policies really help ensure reliable service-to-service communication. And with this last command, I discover the services within my cluster into Anypoint Platform for full management and governance. For demo purposes, I've completed installation of Anypoint Service Mesh. Let's go back into Anypoint Platform and see this in action. I'm back in API Manager, and I refresh my view. I can still see the same Mule apps as before. I also see the services that came in from our payments Kubernetes cluster in the same single-pane view. In this way, I've extended our application network for all types of services. I can further refine this view to see only the newly discovered services from our cluster. And from here, I can extend the full power of our API management capabilities to these non-Mule services. In this example, this payment app gets a lot of requests, and I want to protect it from unauthorized access. I'm going to apply a client ID enforcement policy. I'll start by clicking into the payment service, and here I see a lot of the same details as I do today. I also see that this is a non-Mule service that was discovered with Anypoint Service Mesh. To apply my policy, I follow the same steps as I do today. To start, I go to the Policies tab. And here, I see that there haven't been any policies applied just as of yet. So let's go ahead and apply one. Just like I do today, I'll pick a client ID enforcement policy. Finally, I see the parameters are all set. All I have to do is click Apply. And we're done. And this was just one example. I can apply policies of all kinds to our services, from rate limits to quota enforcement, and much more. Now, what if I want to view some analytics on how the service is performing? Let's take a look. I'm taken to Anypoint Monitoring, the single source of truth for monitoring our APIs and integrations. Here, I can see the same built-in dashboards and API analytics as I do today, only now for these newly discovered microservices. This really helps me keep visibility into performance and helps my ops teams much more easily troubleshoot issues. Now, how can I reuse these services in the future for another project? I'll go to Anypoint Exchange, the marketplace for integration and API assets. Here, I see a lot of our Mule services. I also see the newly discovered non-MuleSoft assets. These were auto-discovered right after installation, which is great. I filter to just see these newly discovered services, and I see that they're all available in Exchange. So this is really exciting, because I've expanded our reach into what NTO can reuse. My teams can reuse these services in the future to extend our purchasing motion to mobile devices and smartwatches. And most importantly, I know that I can empower my teams going forward to build with the technologies that best align to their skill sets and meet our business needs.
Coarse-grained services, microservices, all in the same platform with the same degree of discoverability, visibility, and manageability, consistency across that entire environment. That is what Anypoint Service Mesh will enable you and your teams to do. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thanks, Mark.
Now let's take a look ahead. As we look into 2020, start to think about the Anypoint platform and these layers of the application network. We have the application layer. We have all the APIs coming from those applications. There's the data flow between those APIs. Of course, there's the security layer as we start to look at the different domains that occur between those APIs and those integrations. Now, as we look at the depth of this stack, these are driving towards the capabilities that we'll be enabling next year. First, at the application layer, enabling citizens even more broadly to adopt and leverage the capabilities that your teams are building and to be a part of the creation of your application network, of those integrations and of those API programs. At the API layer, extending the set of metadata as well as APIs that can be brought into the application network with asyncapi.org enabling evented APIs, looking at Open API Specification 3.0, and also enabling federated queries through API query built on top of those REST APIs. At the data flow layer, we start looking at the ability to understand where sensitive information is flowing throughout your network with sensitivity analysis. And also looking at impact analysis, understanding how a change to an API can affect downstream services. All possible because of the information that is in the application network graph and because of the metadata-driven format in which you've created your application network. We're really excited about all the capabilities that we'll be leveraging in 2020. So as we think about your API programs and your integration platforms, start thinking about how to drive both the depth of capability inside your organizations as well as enabling the breadth of personas to drive your strategies forward. So as we go from here today, what I would ask you to do is to envision what your teams can build, the acceleration that you can have in your businesses as your organizations are looking for your teams to lead them through this next wave of innovation by looking at both the depth of integration and API capabilities as well as the breadth of personas that you can bring in to these programs. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of Connect.